This podcast brought to you by Audible, which is giving away a free audiobook to listeners of the Engadget Podcast. If you appreciate this show, the best way to show your support is to head over to audible.com/Engadget. You can download books like Blue Notes by Joan Didion or Robopocalypse by Daniel H. Wilson and listen to them anytime totally for free. Go to audible.com/Engadget for your free audiobook. Hello, welcome to the Engadget Podcast for the week of April 8th. My name is Tim Stevens. I'm the editor-in-chief of Engadget, and I have a wonderful selection of folks with me today.
Hi, I'm Ben Gilbert. I'm also from Engadget. I'm a senior member.
Also have Dana Wollman and Joseph Volpe. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
We've got 4 folks on the couch today, so a full house.
And I just wanted to say, if anyone watching or listening wants to show their appreciation for me, they can email me directly, and I will send you an audiobook of my recording of 50 Shades of Grey redo.
That sounds
Go
amazing.
Grayer.
Absolutely. I might take you up on that offer myself. We're proud to welcome Audible as our sponsor for the month, and that's pretty awesome. So there were 2 books recommended there. You can make your own mind up about which one came from Brian and which came from yours truly. Enjoy, we hope, anyway. I also wanted to remind people we do this live, actually. So if you're listening to us on MP3, if you'd like to join in the fun as we do this live, we record at 3:30 on Thursdays, Thursday afternoon, in Eastern, that is, of course. And,
Or thereabouts.
We're doing it live right now.
3:51.
Yeah, we might be a little late from time to time. It happens. But here we are. And it's live. And it's Google Fiber in a new city.
Yay!
You no longer have to consider moving to Kansas City to get Google Fiber. You can now consider moving to Austin, Texas.
Was anybody
an upgrade,
considering
I think.
moving to Kansas
I
City?
think some people probably were. I think so. Yeah, for that kind of bandwidth, yeah. I know I certainly did. So we actually had the first indications over the weekend that this was going to happen, but it became official this week. Coming mid-2014, so probably when it starts to hit 120 in the shade, you'll be able to get your high-speed internets there in Austin, Texas.
That's going to be really great for the engineers
Absolutely
out there
fantastic.
setting up and drilling into people's houses.
Sweating away.
Sounds like a
And
blast.
it's all dry heat, I hear.
We should ask Mr. Trout about that. I don't think that's necessarily the case. But they didn't give us any details as far as planning goes, or pricing, or that sort of thing, but certainly we're expecting it to be similar to what's in Kansas City, so should be reasonably priced. And we do know that they are going to have the same basically free plan that they have in Kansas City, where you can you pay for the installation of the fiber, which would be a couple $100, and then you get free 5 megabit service.
For 7 years. Right?
Is it 7 years?
It's 7
Oh.
years, yeah. You gave me this look like I was crazy. Yeah, 7 years is
Because
that's amazing,
that is crazy,
right?
Ben.
Like
That is crazy.
legitimately amazing, though, right? Like you pay that one-time service fee and you have free internet for 7 years and decent internet, right? Like,
Oh, yeah, 5 megabits is
megabits.
That's
quite
certainly
useful.
more than enough,
Way
yeah.
better than your average DSL connection, for sure. This is awesome. Perhaps even more awesome was like 5 minutes later, AT&T said, hey, we like fiber too. We're going to launch in Austin as well.
But they will not be offering free service.
No, I think that's safe to
not
say.
AT&T.
How did that happen? I mean, clearly they weren't making a lightning decision within those 5 minutes. Like, aha, we have to do something. I mean, was it just a coincidence? Did they happen to have picked the same city, or what?
It's certainly possible that local regulators were going out and soliciting for this sort of thing. I'm sure that was part of it. The timing is definitely very interesting anyway. AT&T's press release says, today it's pleased to see local communities and municipalities acknowledging the promise and power of economic development associated with telecommunications investment. Basically what they're saying is people want high-speed internet and it helps business.
no way.
Totally.
Get right out with that kind of stuff.
Absolutely
But
right.
it doesn't seem as though, at least on the AT&T end, that they have any sort of specifics in place in terms of deployment or anything worked out with the city of Austin in terms of the footprint. Right? Am I under the wrong assumption there? I mean, from what I was reading, it
Right.
seemed as if they don't even know what the neighborhoods would be that they would target. Or
Right. Google's announcement was very much, we're coming, we're building this out. We're not going to say exactly where yet, but we've been working with
Right.
the local folks, and it's going to happen. AT&T's was, we're already moving broadband into Austin, and we're going to make some fiber happen as well.
Right.
It was definitely less committal. They said, prepared to build an advanced fiber optic infrastructure in Austin, Texas. So they're prepared to do it.
Is this fiber to the home or is it fiber to then copper?
That's a good question. I don't know that they've
Oh, well, that's your answer.
specified.
You can decide in 5 minutes that you're
Yeah, that's
prepared to do it
that's
if
what
you
I'm
were already
questioning.
actually
Yeah.
prepared to do it.
It's got to be to the home because they're saying 1 gigabit speeds.
Okay, yeah, then
so-
it couldn't be over.
Yeah.
coax.
Which is, as awesome as 5 megabits free is, 1 gigabit regardless of cost, is pretty awesome too. So that's pretty exciting. AT&T is talking about their $98 billion investment in local infrastructure. So this is basically, them building up their broadband internet access a little bit more versus Google, which is, making a major step into a second city. And, I'm really excited that AT&T responded so quickly because that means that really Google is kind of getting under the skin of these guys.
Forcing competition,
Yeah. I mean, I think that we would all love to live in a city where Google and AT&T were fighting for your business, right?
That's like the most exciting thing to me about Google Fiber. Like, yes, 1 gigabit internet is super exciting, but Google entering the fray with all these entrenched guys like AT&T and Verizon and whatever and pushing back, especially... I mean, I have Time Warner here in New York. That is my only option.
They
here
have a
in New
near
York.
monopoly,
Don't even get me
and
started.
I get the feeling they don't even want my business.
No, right. Like, you called them, and I've called them and threatened to cancel, and they're like, do it, go ahead. I'm like,
Please fix
really?
my
That's your
internet.
answer?
We'll be there in 4 weeks.
Right.
And
It's horrible, and I have no choice, right? Like, I would happily pay for Fios or whatever. I would pay more.
I
even,
actually dropped
and
the
I
F
can't.
word, the FiOS word, and then they cut their wait time to about a week or so.
Oh,
Yeah, but
amazing.
that's
Yeah.
if they know that your building can be wired for Fios or is already.
Right.
I tried that and it didn't matter because my building is not.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, my house is 6 miles short of Fios. And, of course, Verizon is no longer building out Fios, which
Yeah.
is very sad.
They aren't? Really?
Question about that.
Why do they keep advertising it then in regions that I can't buy it in? That seems
They're
okay.
just cruel individuals.
That's
Ben.
bizarre. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, with Fios, can Fios theoretically hit gigabyte speeds or
That's a
gigabit?
good
Sorry,
question.
gigabit.
I don't know that they've ever talked about going gigabit. Since they're not really building out the infrastructure, I don't know if they're really putting much money into pushing speeds any higher. But I think it's 250 is at the fastest speed right now.
Yeah, they have that crazy ultimate package.
I mean, I have 50 on Time Warner, and it's
Yeah, same.
way more than I need.
Same. Well,
So-
but have you ever I monitor because of my dispute that I was having with them.
You're a
I've been
crazy
monitoring
person
speed tests, and you don't normally get.
No, I think that on average, I'm not getting 50.
Yeah.
It's at night and when I'm directly Ethernet plugged into the modem.
Or
right?
if you
Like-
call and tell them to put it on the appropriate channel for the modem, and then that is channel 11. In case anyone's
Anyway,
wondering.
a little insider baseball on Time Warner there, but yeah, I think that's the most exciting thing, right? Like the gigabit internet is cool, like
Yeah.
faster internet is great, but that's really exciting. Like
Also,
the competition is.
Yeah.
what
If you
I
think
care
about Google offering the incentives, because obviously their ads are their bread and butter,
Mm-hmm.
offering 5 megabits per second for free, right? They can then bump up that package. Will that force people like companies like AT&T, Verizon, Time Warner do the same thing?
Yeah.
Sure, hopefully.
Just did some research. They actually just raised the maximum speed to 300 megabits per second, and they did do some tests where they theoretically hit 980 megabits per second
okay.
in testing early before deployment. That's capped, for people, but they could, in theory, get up to just about a gigabit as well. So I'd call 980 megabits per second close enough.
Yeah.
That's
We'll
not
give
close
it to them.
enough.
We'll
Yeah.
give it to
Splitting
them.
hairs at that point.
I think
really.
so as well. So I think the most tragic part of this is that none of us can get this. None of us in this room.
How long is it going to be before a market like New York is addressed, though? Right, like Austin is
Yeah.
big, but like
Right.
New York is. I mean, Austin fits in half of a borough of New York, right? Like it's not.
Yeah, and Austin
Comparable.
is fairly affluent at this point. It's very hip at this
Sure.
point. Yeah, it's taken
They have
them
movie
years.
theaters you can eat dinner in. I'm told.
I don't think that's necessarily a hip thing necessarily.
You can do that in Prague.
I've done that. Yeah, I've done that in Minneapolis.
Oh man, okay, forget it.
Yeah, it took them years to get from Kansas City to Austin. It's probably going to take them years to go somewhere else, and ultimately, I don't think that somewhere else is probably going to be a major metropolitan area like a
No.
Los Angeles or a New York City
Yeah.
or a San Francisco. I mean, it'd be amazing if they did, or Albany, New York, maybe. Just
or
throwing that out
anywhere
there.
where Tim lives.
Somewhere that's close to my house, maybe. So that I think it is unfortunate that it's going to be that slow, and I think that is probably the one thing that's really keeping this from being something that AT&T is really legitimately worried about. But hopefully they can spread a little bit more, and maybe go to somewhere like Atlanta, that'd be like AT&T's back door, and if they start to make inroads there, that might be a little bit more threatening to them.
That actually seems like a perfectly logical market too, right? It's like the Baltimores and Phillies and Atlantas of the world, like
smaller cities.
the cities, but not
And the Albany's.
right.
Yeah.
The Albany,
The Albany.
Yeah.
Albany. I know actually, way back when Verizon was actually building out their fiber, that when they chose New York City, they went primarily to Staten Island first because of the affluent neighborhoods there, and that's where they put the first test market here for Fios. So it's potential that if Google were to bring it to New York, that's where you might see it.
That wasn't
first.
just a demand of the Wu-Tang or anything.
It's the total different end of the island.
What is that? Oh, Wu-Tang hater.
Yeah, same thing up in Albany. That they kind of, when Faust was rolling out, they were targeting the more affluent suburbs around Albany before they really went, and then they just stopped. And then I
Wonderful.
shed a tear. So yeah, Google, come to our houses, please. We'd love to. Or I think we deal with AT&T Fiber if we had.
Yeah, I would
just
take it.
something other than Time Warner, or in my
Yes.
case, Verizon. Yeah, I was trying to do a Twit appearance this past Sunday.
I saw
and
this.
We were having a windstorm in Albany, which had taken out the LTE. For whatever reason, it took out Verizon's towers in the Albany area. And so I would get online for like 2 minutes at a time, just long enough to connect, and for them to say, okay, let's start the show. And then I would get disconnected. So thanks, Verizon,
Yeah.
for that. That was really great. Leo was very happy about that. All right. Moving right along, we've got our first image of what might be a component of the next generation iPad, maybe.
To tell you, I'm really excited by this image.
It is.
Of a hand.
It's pretty
glass.
amazing.
Yeah.
A hand wearing what appears to be a non-latex glove,
Yeah.
holding what appears to be a white faceplate glass piece from a full-size iPad, not a mini, but it is shaped like the mini's glass. In fact, it's got, I think, the smaller home button and the thinner bezels that would tend to imply that this is going to be, the same sort of profile as the new iPad mini and as the new iPod Touch, with, the kind of more squarish back to it rather than the tapered back that they've had in the current iPad, which makes sense. That's the move that they've been going for in their mobile devices, and I think it would make sense for them to take the next iPad there. But it certainly looks like a piece of glass to me.
Yep.
Well, it does.
Yes, it does. It's, I don't know. I mean, what? It's so hard to get excited about a piece of glass. Like, I wanna be like, oh man, this is telling us so much, but it tells us so little about what the next iPad would be. I think it's like it's like obvious that we're gonna get another iPad. Like it's surprise. It's probably gonna take some of the design and aesthetic from other successful Apple products. Like that's.
But it'll look like an iPad.
Yep.
Yeah.
All these things and more. Like,
It
not a
exists.
huge
This is
surprise.
proof that it exists.
There's 5 fingers on that glass, so maybe it's some sort of a new multi-touch capability it's hinting at.
No.
I don't think so. No, probably not.
No, I don't
but
think
it's a
so.
funny thing to speculate that for no reason.
Was it really that funny?
No.
No.
But there's a lot of talk about an event here in April. We are now, we're not quite midway through the month, but we're getting there. So if indeed Apple was going to do an event in April to launch this device, they're running low on time.
We'll find out 2 days before the event.
Right.
People can plan it.
It's 7 days. That's fair. It's 7 days before, so still plenty of time for Apple to throw something together. That's for sure. And then we've got I/O coming up next month, which Apple would be kind of funny if they wanted to step right on I/O. They've done it to CES in the past, so and then of course we'll have WWDC sometime in the month of June, probably right around E3. Usually it's not too far from that.
Don't
So-
discount BlackBerry Live. That's happening at the same time as I/O.
That's
That
right.
is a very major event that I
That's
will be
right.
at.
That's right. So thanks, BlackBerry, for
Yes.
really trying to give it to Google there and really.
I'm going to be late to
mess
all
with
that
their
Google
plans.
news. The whole week.
BlackBerry might have more music videos, so
That's true. They might do a live
you can
performance
be on the
this
front line of
time.
music video
Yeah.
news.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm here for.
Is anybody excited about anything for the next iPad? I mean, so we're guessing the case is going to be different. Anybody expecting anything other than the typical faster, larger?
There was a rumor about an
Storage.
A7 chip being made by not Samsung, right?
Yeah,
That was another
yeah,
part
taking
of
it
things.
in-house.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're excited about the
Man.
software. We know so
Yeah.
little except a vague rumor that they're going to flatten, supposedly. I
take
think that
away
was
the-
the word, flatten the OS, but I don't know
Right.
what that means for iOS after all these
Less
years.
skeuomorphism.
Less skeuomorphism, less funky textures of linen and such like that. It'll be, if everything goes according to what we've heard, it'll be much flatter. It'll be much more plain, so a little bit more simple, a little bit less trying to pretend to be paper and aluminum and things like that, and more just trying to be a simple phone operating system. I'm very eager to see what is in iOS 7, but I don't think that we will see that until June at the earliest. If indeed they do launch an iPad before that, it'll probably still be
Right.
running
We've never
6,
seen a
6
software
whatever.
overhaul starting on the iPad and then the phone.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
always been the
true.
other way around.
Yep. So that'll probably be a little bit later down the road. But yeah, I'm certainly not expecting anything major to come from the next iPad. I mean, certainly for the next iPhone, there's been a lot of talk about having some sort of a fingerprint scanner or something like that built into the device. Some even say right on the home button, so you can hit the home button and log right into your phone, which would be fantastic.
Well, I guess that would be good for the enterprises that are buying the iPad, right?
For
I mean,
BYOD and-
not for
yeah.
me or for Ben or Joseph, but maybe
Well,
the businesses.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people use to log in, that kind of thing, and to be able to replace it. I mean, I have it on my Galaxy Note, which is really annoying.
Yes.
Joseph, we talked about that
Yes.
because there's a little bit of lag, especially on Android. It's quicker on iOS for sure, but still, if you're tapping in a passcode, that's annoying. If you could have, the same level of security and just by hitting your phone on the home button, that'd be really nice. Google tried to deliver something like that with the Face Unlock feature. But ultimately, they even give you a warning that says this is not really a secure way to unlock your phone, and it's very, very easy.
Didn't you and Darren...
Really? There's a disclaimer on the service that's supposed to... Really?
Yeah.
But I feel
disclaimer, this whole thing probably doesn't work. Really? That's
It's just it's a neat gimmick for people.
Yeah.
It's another feature.
That's dumb. That is dumb. I don't know I don't have no other way of putting that. That is a really bad way of rolling out a product. I'm sorry.
It's
Keep going.
unfortunate.
Anyway, go ahead.
But if indeed we do see something like that, I don't think we'll see it on the iPad. I think it'll hit the iPhone first.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they'll need something to distinguish. If indeed we do see a 5S, which I think is what we're expecting this year, they'll need something to make that stand out from the 5.
It's really hard to know what I would want from a new, like hardware-wise, from a new iPad or even a new iPhone.
Well, what
right?
about
Like,
a
I don't-
stylus? Do you think Apple will ever go the way of including
No.
I
stylus
just don't
support?
at all. No.
You have a stylus, Joseph. You have 10 of them.
These? They're too
That's-
stubby. That's what my piano teacher always said. Still
Yeah,
smarting after
We've
7
hit a
years
nerve
of
here,
that.
I don't
folks.
think they would use the stylus specifically because of like they've cited repeatedly why they wouldn't use the stylus, and like that's like a big Jobsian thing or whatever. But
They did say stuff about not having a 7-inch tablet, though, and they had
That's
to eat
true.
their words.
That's true.
They said a
on
number
that.
of things that ultimately,
But
the
it's
market
not
shifted.
7 inches,
Mm.
to their credit.
It's 7.9.
It's 7.9.
I do think that I don't think the stylus is mainstream enough that Apple would feel pressured to succumb to market forces like it did with the big screen iPhone. I mean,
Yeah.
it clearly, and maybe we'll see a bigger iPhone even, but it clearly knew it had 4 inches wasn't acceptable anymore. So it gave into pressure there. I don't see it giving into pressure right now over the stylus because even products like the Note 8 that Ben has here, they're niche.
Yeah.
yeah,
So what else could they do to distinguish? I mean, other than the ecosystem, of course, which is very solid. What else could they do on the hardware side to distinguish the iPad from the competition?
I mean, right now the thing that's distinguishing it from the competition is having the name Apple attached to it and being a relatively good product, right? Like there isn't any amazing bell and whistle that's in an iPad that dramatically makes it different from, I don't know, a Note 10.1 or whatever else. It's just an Apple product and has iOS running on it.
Also,
right?
the
Like, that's-
integrity of the construction.
Right. It's a
that
really
build,
well-built
it's-
product. I think that's, yes, that is implicit in what I'm saying also, though, right? Like, yeah, they're good products, but
And is that still enough for the iPad?
I think for a lot of people, yeah. Apple, the name still carries a ton of
I want to
cachet.
say, I don't know what I want because then I am basically confirming Apple's entire marketing ethos, which is that consumers don't know what they want and will tell you what they want.
And they'll take anything
So-
you give them.
But that's the truth to an extent, right? Like, I want them to show me something that's going to really impress me and something that I wouldn't think of. That's why I'm not an Apple engineer.
Right.
So I feel like okay about conceding that because I didn't go to engineering school. So I feel okay about that.
We've got Tomislav in chat here asking, is Apple leading or lagging at the moment? I think that's kind of what we're sort of talking around, whether or not their specs are really leading the industry. And I think it's safe to say that really, in a lot of ways, that they're certainly not at this point.
I think it's safe to say that they're lagging, that Android has sort of picked up pace there.
It's so weird comparing Apple to Android as an ecosystem, though, because Android is like, what, 30 companies that are making Android devices? Or, I mean, I'm probably over-exaggerating that number, but...
That's probably way more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So way more. Then that's Apple competing against everyone,
Yeah.
right? Like that seems like an
Huawei,
unfair comparison to make.
sorry.
Is all I'm saying.
Just list them all off and take our time.
But to say that though, like Apple, their products are lagging against 100 companies making Android devices. I would hope.
I think
Like that's one company versus everyone.
on the tablet front, not so much. I mean, they were really. I feel like they beat a lot of their competitors to the punch with this Retina display iPad that still is better than a lot of these other
Yeah.
displays. And I think their ecosystem on the tablet side there's a bigger gap with Android on the tablet side than on the phone side. I think more with the phone, you can make the argument that it's a little long in the tooth.
Yeah.
Well, I think specifically,
fair.
Laptops especially. And you know I like laptops, so
Dana does like her laptops.
she
I like
does.
laptops, and
She's
I
got
cover
one in her
them.
lap right now.
I think your bed is made of
See it.
laptops at this point, right?
It is. It's really uncomfortable.
An ultra bed. Certainly in terms of specs, that they're not really leading the industry at this point in terms of functionality. I mean, Samsung's trying all sorts of crazy stuff
Oh.
in all sorts of crazy sizes, as we'll talk to very shortly here. But Apple's playing toward the middle of the market. They're hitting the mass market, and right now they're hitting it square in the head. They're certainly producing devices that are selling very well. They saw that they had a need for a cheaper tablet, and they've got it out there. I don't think they're really playing the latest and greatest spec game at this point. I think they're playing the nicest and most refined device game at this point.
I mean, if you think about
successful for them.
The omission of NFC, right? Why haven't they done it? Because even though most Android phones at this point have it built in, not many consumers know how to use it or even use it. I mean, I use it very rarely, to tap to pair, or if you're beaming something and like with S-Beam or something like that. So I think for Apple, it boils down to, is this going to be an ultimately useful feature that is going to be simple to use and that we can explain in our commercials? Because if you can't explain it in the commercials, why put it Why put it in the product?
No, it's very true. The Samsung Galaxy S4 event, they had so many features that they were trying to launch and that they were trying to shove into that 45-minute window that they had for demonstrating stuff. And at the end, our heads were spinning because they were trying to show so much out. If they had just picked 5 of those and made them the big deals, and then it's kind of thrown the rest in a press release, I think that would have had a lot more impact. And Apple definitely does that. They have new features that come into the OS, but they really don't play many of them that large until they'll pick 1 or 2 things that are really their big things. So Maps or Siri or something like that. That'll be the big thing. Everything else will be forgotten.
Yeah.
And it works well for them. I mean, Siri is something that you can do very similar functionality in Android and even in Windows Phone, but because they haven't made such a big deal out of it, then ultimately nobody really talks about it or even thinks it's there. But on Apple, a lot of people know Siri. They know that name. We're all agreeing with each other.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this device which Ben is holding now. This is the Note 8, which is another screen size that Samsung now makes a product for.
That was quite the way of introducing it. It's another screen size Note. That's true.
What I think is so great about the Note 8.0 is that Ben Gilbert is what I like to think of as Android illiterate. He rages against the machine of mobile and just doesn't comprehend.
I think mobile devices are stupid.
And I told him,
for dummies.
that this was a pretty fantastic tablet, and then he was going to like it, and I let him borrow it. And last night, what were you texting me at like near midnight?
I was texting you that I couldn't stop hugging it.
And that you were in love with it.
I was joking about the hugging part, but I do love it. I do really like it. So I had a Note 2 very briefly after their launch event and used that for a little bit and liked it. Like, it's nice, but it's a very large phone for me, and I have small, little, fat hands. And
gamer hands.
Gamer hands, if you will. That's an insult.
Is that a
I don't
thing?
appreciate that.
I don't know. I've been gaming for longer than Ben, and I have really long, skinny fingers.
You've got, you're a lumberjack also, so that's
true.
That's a big part of it.
This is true.
So, I didn't love it because it's not ideal for me as a phone, but as a tablet, like I have an iPad 2, like an older iPad, and it's fine, and I use it for browsing the internet on the weekends or whatever, but like having this in my hand, I can grip this and use a stylus with it and whatever, like that is on a tablet form factor ideal, right? Like the 10.1 Note is, I think, too big.
Yeah.
But the 8-inch seems like just right. That said,
the 10.1
this
was
didn't
a
cost me
misfire,
anything, and that's why I feel that way.
Yeah.
For $400, that is bananas.
It is overpriced.
It's not like overpriced.
Yeah. Well,
it's crazy. It's
depending
stupidly
on who
uncompetitive.
You are. It's one of the I can't really think of another tablet in that size range that has pen support.
No.
So if
Awesome.
you are one of the few people who really get excited about that on a tablet, the dual digitizer is worth it, and you can maybe understand the premium. I mean, dual digitizers don't come cheap.
And it's
You
a
can
quad,
quote
it's
me
a
on
quad
that.
core.
But
It's a quad core device too. You have to remember.
right.
that.
So I mean, it's not really an apples to apples comparison with something like the Nexus 7, but to mainstream consumers who don't really know the difference, how is Samsung or a Best Buy going to explain?
And that's what you
why
just
it's
said
more
is the problem.
expensive.
Because the first thing you said is like, it has a dual digitizer in it. And then he said it has a quad-core processor, and my mom doesn't know what either of those things are. And that's what it matters, right?
Right,
Like,
so-
this thing needs to sell to people who are buying iPad minis,
So
and
this
it's
is a
not
good.
going
It's
to
a, it's a
on
good
those
buy
specs.
for people for whom that does matter.
Right, but
How
are there
many-
enough people who are buying that? Like,
Are
that's my
readers, but yeah,
question.
it's not mainstream.
Yeah, I don't think
consumers.
this is. That's the problem. Is I don't think it's a mainstream product at all. Although it's a really nice product, and it like kind of breaks my heart that it's so expensive, right? Because it's not going to compete against all these other things.
So you'll wait for it to go on sale.
Yeah. I'll have to.
It will.
Oh well, but it's nice. I like it.
It is nice. It's a little bit fatter than I had thought. You know, looking at pictures, much like the Galaxy S3 looks really thin until you pick it up. Then you realize it's actually much thicker. Samsung's really good at kind of tricking the eye into thinking something is slim, especially in product photos. It's a little bit chunky. The bezels are reasonably thin, but I think they could be a little bit thinner even. But yeah,
It's better built than some other Samsung devices I've seen.
Oh,
May
well,
I?
if you remember the Note
You may.
10.1, as soon as you picked it up, it creaked all over the place. It
Creaked?
squeaked. Yeah, definitely. It was very bad. This is, absolutely solid. I
Yeah.
mean, I think I have a Nexus 7 at home, and I have the iPad 2 as well. And I usually keep my Nexus 7 on my couch. And if I just want to like look anything up,
Sure.
you know, without having to deal with my Note 2, which I absolutely love, and normally is the replacement for all that. But this grew on me really, I think, because it's so. It almost feels, I don't want to use the word disposable, but I'm not concerned about just like chucking it back onto the couch
It's
or
tough.
dropping it.
I think it feels
seems
like-
really durable.
Yeah.
Just like that.
I agree.
Yeah,
I fully
exactly.
agree.
That's what I normally do.
You showed that tablet.
Take that note.
Well, I think that you're right though in that like an iPad Mini feels like
Oh, you have to
it feels like
gingerly
delicate,
place it and give it a
right?
nice cover.
And
I
I'm
wouldn't-
terrified
yeah.
that you can like drop it, and
Yeah.
if it scratches, you're like, it's cool, it's nice, it can take it.
Right.
And I appreciate that, right? Like I am not somebody who fetishizes super nice electronics. Like I want them to be able to go through some wear because I use them hard usually, like during events and whatever else, right? Like for the nature of our jobs. And I get into fistfights with them sometimes for no reason.
You mean the people around you.
But the Note 8 seems like it can really take that, and it seems like tough and solidly built while still being like pretty nice looking.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't know, like my girlfriend who is not at all interested in tech like that is like, this is a nice thing,
Yeah.
right? Like she picks it up and is immediately attracted to it, and I think that matters for the mainstream.
Then you should buy one. That sounds like approval and
Yeah,
permission
I
to
know.
me.
Well, I already have an iPad 2, so probably not getting any other
Now,
tablets.
some major advancements here. They moved the stylus to the corner, which is interesting, instead of the back, which will make Note users like me a little bit confused. But perhaps the biggest advancement here, you can use the stylus on the buttons on the front of the tablet now, on the menu and the back button, which, for whatever ridiculous reason, they didn't extend the digitizer down to cover the buttons on the previous Note devices. So now you can use the buttons, which I think is a nice advancement.
Although it resulted before in Joseph using the stylus to push the button in the middle, like the actual button, and I thought that was weird.
I do that.
But that's the whole point. I mean,
Right.
the whole point now is that you don't have to interrupt your S Pen workflow. So you can,
S-Pen
yeah,
Your workflow.
your Swerk. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, that's why I don't want to have to break back into using a finger, because that's what the Note 8 does. It's what it enables. The other thing I would say about it is that, I mean, they've added in that reading mode. And that's specifically so that you can use it as an e-reader.
That's the other
because-
thing that's appealing to me, though,
Yeah.
right? Like this size factor for e-reading. Like I tried using the like iBooks and stuff on the iPad, and it's not a good screen for reading on.
No.
I haven't tried the reading mode in here yet. So, does it work well?
Well, I will say this. And I think I said this to Dana as well. I had to constantly swap it on and off from the toggle notifications to really tell what it was doing, because you can whitelist the apps you want to work with reading mode. So I put Kindle on there, and I have my huge Kindle library, and I switched the book I was reading to on the. To
we
the
have
Note
to
8.
talk about that
I'll show
after
you
the show.
And yeah, it was a nice experience. I personally don't enjoy reading on tablets because I don't like. It hurts my eyes too much.
Right.
I prefer the Kindle.
Yeah, me too.
By far Paperwhite. But yeah, I noticed it in Gmail when I shut it off. It just gently takes the tone of the colors down a bit, and it dims the screen just enough. It's not incredibly noticeable, but it does have a sort of subtle improvement to the reading experience. And then there's Watch On, which is like which
I like
everyone
there's,
is doing
like, the
now.
IR thing on it built in.
Oh,
That's
the-
so nice.
the
I
IR
like that
blaster?
it has an IR blaster. Like it's just one more thing. Like you were saying, it's something you just pick up on your couch and quickly use for the internet,
Right.
rather than me like picking up a laptop or a bigger tablet. And that's totally like I fully agree. And the IR blaster makes that even easier because it's
Yeah.
like the time when I would be using a tablet on a couch. It's like I'm sitting there watching the news and I want to look at Twitter or whatever else while I'm sitting there.
And that's
because
what-
I'm like 70, by the way, in case you're wondering. I'm like 70.
But I think that's what upsets me, that they took out the HSPA PA Plus radios, because I found myself sitting on my couch being like, if I could make calls with this or just use this as my phone,
Mhm.
this would be the only thing I carried around. You know,
Let's just take an example of how silly I look with this
right?
up
But
to
you
my
could
head right
also
now.
don't forget, you can plug in a headset
This
and
is
you just have your
ridiculous.
headphones like anybody else does
I
with
feel
an
ridiculous.
iPhone.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, but you're not going to do that.
I never would do that. No.
I would,
I would be
but-
pointing and laughing at people walking down the street doing that. Like with this, an
You would
People
not
April
be
used to
able
laugh.
to.
Listen, back in 2005, 2004, people were laughing at people walking around with Blackberries because they seemed so large next to their heads.
Well,
I
those
mean,
people were silly.
I was
This
one of
is
those people.
ridiculous. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. It
Anyway.
works for me in all of Korea.
It does. But yeah, I like it. It's nice. And I, like you said, am not a huge Android dude, so.
Has the Ben
For what it's
Gilbert
worth.
seal of approval.
Yeah.
Not the only devices of odd sizes that Samsung launched this week. Also had the Samsung Mega 2 Samsung Megas.
Yeah.
So more minute gaps in the Samsung product line that they are now plugging. A 5.8-inch device, which is pretty sizable for a phone.
But it's QHD.
And QHD, which is what, 960 by 5? Yeah, 960 by 540, which is
Ugly.
like the same as my old Droid Charge,
Yes.
which was QHD, and that was bad on a 4.3-inch device. So we're going another inch and a half bigger. Only 8 gigs of storage on the 5.8-inch device. 1.4 gigahertz dual-core chip. So we're talking a mid-range, large phone. And then
Who wants that though?
that's the question. I don't know. Then there's the 6.3-inch version, which is a little bit higher spec. You can get up to 16 gigs of storage in this guy, but it does have micro SD expansion, which is nice. Again, 6.3-inch. They said only HD on the screen, which presumably means 720p or thereabouts. Yeah, so 2 rather mid-range devices, really large mid-range devices.
You know why I think they released it?
Why, Joseph?
Because Huawei made the Ascend Mate. I think that's the only reason. I think Samsung was like, "Oh, really? You think you have the biggest smartphone? We're gonna make one that's 6.3
Take
because
that,
the Mate
Huawei.
is 6.1 inches." And the software is just a mess. The skin that Huawei has on there is a mess. But it's a otherwise nice phone. I mean, I don't think I could graduate up from the Note 2.
Isn't the Mate Asia only?
For now, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think
right.
they've announced plans to bring it outside, but I think that's the only reason why. They were like, yeah, okay, we can do this too.
Which means there's really no end to the growth of phones.
Or at what point does your phone just straight up become a tablet? That's why I'm
Right.
saying,
Yeah.
why doesn't the Note 8 just have, why can't you just make that
It's
into
because
a
Darren
smartphone?
Murph laughed at Samsung at MWC and said, "You guys are fools for turning this into a phone." It's all Darren Murph's fault. That's why we
shamed
cannot
them.
get an HSPA
But
Plus
he wrote an
version here in the
editorial
US.
shaming.
He did.
You did.
It was
So
delightful.
Darren Murph,
He
thank
crushed-
you
You
for
crushed my dreams.
preventing the U.S. market from getting
Victor
an
Wu says
HSPA.
that maybe we all need bigger heads. I think that's a.
I'm
apt
already covered on
thing
that
to say.
front, so I'm okay. Victor also said that Samsung's just tossing everything in the market to saturate things, basically just trying to more or less see what sticks. Do you guys agree, or is there a method to this madness?
Oh, no, 1,000%. I mean, look what they do with their software features. They will just come up with anything that their engineers come up with. They're like, yep, put it in there, it'll be good. No one will know how to use it. We'll find it, but
How many things have I asked you to show me how to set on this so far?
pretty much
Like
everything.
most of the
yeah,
things.
yeah.
Yeah. Like even just changing where icons are, like basic stuff, and then you figured it out and realized it was totally didn't make any sense how to do it. Like that's
It's not
What
intuitive.
gets me here, though, is like if you're going to experiment and try and buck the trend, like for now, there is this association in a lot of people's minds with really big screens and flagship phones, and they're bucking the trend and making it just a mid-range phone. But why is nobody making a smaller size phone that's a flagship? That's to me the really obvious way that to test the system and saturate the market that hasn't been done yet, and no one's doing it, especially
Well,
not Samsung.
Apple's doing it.
They've cornered the market on
Yeah.
small flagships.
It's a small flagship, but like
Well, how small? What
a
screen
timid
size?
flagship.
What screen size are you talking about, though, Dana?
Something tiny, like 4.8 inches.
Now that's tiny. I love that.
You know,
the
I would
iPhone
even settle
4.7
for
or
like
something?
4.5
Yeah.
or something.
4.5.
Yeah. Okay, I guess Apple does that, but why nobody else?
Yeah, I mean, it could be said that maybe Apple's doing it so well that everybody else has just decided to go, okay.
That
if
never
you're gonna
stopped Samsung
corner that
before.
bit-
that's
Sure. It's true. It's true. In fact,
You want
it's
them to make a
encouraged
small
Samsung.
flagship.
They're
They
going to
make
come out
plenty
with the
of small
Galaxy
phones.
S4 Mini, but it's going to be a miniature Galaxy S4 with nothing that's good about the Galaxy S4. They're
that
going
was-
to do it.
That was just like the Galaxy S3 Mini, though.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't pull these
the
ideas
point.
out of nowhere.
In chat, Amolbio is asking if this has Bluetooth, which it does, I presume.
Yes.
So you could connect a Bluetooth headset to it and use something like Skype if you wanted to and do voice chat that way. But if you wanted to actually make voice calls over a SIM, there's no SIM in here, so there's no wireless data. They could have at least done wireless data on the thing,
Right.
and maybe we will see a wireless data version down the road. But ultimately, I don't think this thing's going to sell well enough for them to
No.
really warrant
the
bringing a
wireless
second
data
version
would
to
just
the US.
make it more expensive, and it's already $400 freaking
Yeah.
dollars.
And I
Like,
bet it
I
is.
agree with you, but like, how could they? Don't
I
make
don't
it
feel
more
that
money.
they're going to even bother they're marketing it heavily or even at all.
It's possible.
You
And that's a shame because it's so nice.
I was
that's
actually shocked when
disappointing.
I was testing the camera. I was walking around the East Village and I saw a giant billboard for the Note 2. It's the last photo in the gallery that I took. And I think that's one of the first times I've seen a giant Note 2 ad.
There's one right outside of Penn Station actually that I walk
really?
by every day. It's been up there for a couple of weeks now. Yeah, it's interesting that they're pushing the Note 2 now with the GS4 coming so soon. But yeah, it only popped up maybe a week or two ago. So there seems, well, I mean, we've heard how many hundreds of millions of dollars Samsung is throwing into marketing this year. Obviously, it's not all for the Galaxy S4, so the Note 2 is getting a little bit of love in there too. We've also got another device here to talk about, the new Xperia.
Oh, yes.
New to us.
I
anyway.
totally forgot this was here. So I just got this today. John Fingus has had this now for, over a week, I think?
I believe so.
Yeah, he's posted his review.
Yeah. He had the Canadian version. This is Sony's global version, but it does have the actual LTE bands. So you could run this on AT&T. In fact, it is on AT&T right now. We have a SIM in there. And we saw this back at CES. This and the Z were the two big stars of the show, in terms of mobile anyway, for CES. And it's exactly... it has all the specifications that the Z does. It's just a more compact form factor. It's not as pretty, feels better, the ergonomics are better, and it's not waterproof.
Darn. All
I know.
all those Shark Tanks I'm getting pushed into.
You say darn now, but yesterday I got caught in that downpour.
I did too.
Okay, and I had my Note 2 out, and I was trying to balance that, and my
Well,
bag,
you
my
have it in your
umbrella.
hand in the
Because
rain.
I was listening to Spotify, and it doesn't fit in my pockets.
You're proving my point where I make fun of your phone size.
No, make fun of
You
my
know, the next
pants
time I
because you
drop-
can't fit anything in them.
The next time I drop a
I'm
phone in the
Sicilian
toilet, though,
fat.
I'm really going to eat my words and wish that
Exactly.
my phone had waterproofing.
You know, and that's yesterday when I was watching it get hit with water and I was freaking out. I thought to myself, God, I wish this were waterproof. And then I was like, oh, the Z and the ZL. Well, not the ZL, but the Z.
I was
Yeah.
just yelling at my dog to go faster because the rain. It was the worst.
Yeah.
I let mine out yesterday, and they just sat there on the porch and looked around for a few moments, and then turned around and went back inside. Again. They were not going to go out in there.
Nope.
Not going to do it. We had, I think, this discussion quite a bit at CES about why more devices aren't waterproof, because it's, I don't want to say common, but it's relatively easy to find a waterproof phone in Japan or in Asia in
Right.
general. In the U.S., I always figured it's probably liability that stops manufacturers from making waterproof devices here because, you know, we're such a litigious society that somebody would leave it in a bucket of salt water for a week and then sue Sony because it doesn't work anymore, which is sad, but true. I would love for my Note 2 to be wireless. And there are, services that you can send your phone off to make them waterproofed, but it'd be great for that to be stock. And I don't want to go swimming with my phone, but I would like to be able to be caught in a shower, or, I take my phone with me when I ride my bike in the mornings to do Strava so I can track my rides, and it rains sometimes. It'd be nice if my phone were waterproof, but no.
I think you're right. I mean, there are also a whole bunch of different certifications, those IP certifications for waterproofing and splash proofing, and then it's temperature dependent. And like you were saying, if there's saline, it's a totally different thing. So yeah, you'd have a whole bunch of people being like, I'm going to sue all of Sony because but I think it's also about the design, because the Z has that omnibalance, that marketing term, but it's really hard edged because of the flaps to cover the ports, and so it's uncomfortable. So I don't know if that also factors into it, because the only other waterproof device I can think of is the Pantech Element, which I reviewed eons ago. And that, just because of the flaps, it just sort of distorts the profile of the device, and I don't know.
Of course, we're not very fond of the flaps on the ZL here either.
No. As Dana Wollman referred to, you can go ahead. Go ahead. I want you to
It's
demonstrate
not
it.
funny if I say it a second time.
Yes, it is.
You're
Just if you
stand-up
weren't
comedian, you
online.
can't do
no,
this.
it's-
Dana asked us what this. Let me see if I can get my finger on the notch there. What this butt flap.
It's funnier when you
Yeah,
say it
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, which has the micro SIM and micro SD. But
It's unfortunate because that phone is really pretty, especially from the front, and you turn it around and you see that stuff, and it kind of distracts from it a little.
yeah, again, I said this particular backing, this grippy one, I don't think there should have been an option. It's good in the hand, but it looks terrible. The other ones that are matte, and I think they come in white or.
Yeah, it's very cheap feeling plastic, and it feels
Yeah.
kind of hollow too.
Yes.
If you wrap your fingernails against it, which is usually my test of quality. Yeah.
Can hear it.
So it's not a very nice tactile feel to
No.
it. But overall, we were talking before, it's a 5-inch device, but it doesn't really feel like a 5-inch device in the hand.
No.
Really nice looking overall, though.
Oh.
It's a flagship.
I don't consider Sony as making phones in the U.S. really, right? Like they're much more popular in Europe, as far as I know.
I can tell you in Spain, just from being on vacation, all I've ever seen are, there was integration in so many. I was watching MTV España, and there was so much integration, excuse me, with Sony products. Their voice, La Voz, was all Sony integration. The bus stop ads were all Sony Xperia products. Everywhere you go, at least in Spain, I can only speak.
It certainly
for
wasn't
Spain.
like that like 3 years ago or 5 years ago.
No,
or
but
whatever.
it was interesting.
Yeah.
But that's the only market that I know so far.
Yeah, they're definitely making a bigger push now with, of course, the separation from Ericsson, which is still
Yes.
fairly recent. I mean, we're just really starting to see the first phones that are straight up Sony,
Yes.
start to finish. They're making a big push now, but certainly they haven't really made the carrier partnerships here in the U.S. yet. Those sorts of things take years to develop. And it's going to take a long time for Sony to really make the kind of investment to be a major player on AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile and Sprint. Right now, our choices are very limited. That's,
But at least with the Z and the ZL, I think just the ZL, they're making that change to offer the global model through the Sony store that will work with AT&T, whereas before they didn't make that possible.
You don't
so-
mind paying full price up front.
Right, exactly.
Molbio is asking, what is a butt flap? Should we maybe be a little more
The
clear
bu-
about that?
The butt flap is the covered port at the base over here.
Meaning like kitty pajamas, where there's like a flap over the butt.
Yeah, if you're wearing a onesie,
Yeah, a
Yeah.
you
onesie.
needed to use the potty.
footy
For
pajamas,
our foreign
yeah.
listeners, imagine a
gross.
pair of pajamas with the feet covered and a little, 2 buttons on the back,
back,
so that
yeah.
if you happen to need to go in the middle of the night. Maybe this is an American.
It might
thing.
be.
It
I
might
never
be.
actually. I've had onesies. I never had ones with butt flaps.
I did.
Not that I remember.
I did.
Did you grow up in the 30s? You might have.
In my mind.
And Molbio is also making the suggestion maybe they should make it waterproof but not tell anybody, which is a good idea too.
That's yeah.
Maybe it is waterproof.
It could be. You want to test it?
I
It
got
has
some
to go
water.
back at the end of the month.
Right here. Does it have to be working when it goes back? That's always the question. We're talking tablets earlier. Microsoft is getting in a little deeper in the tablet game, according to a Wall Street Journal report, that they are going to be launching a new series of Surface tablets this year, which is really a shocker to nobody. But they are going to be including a 7-inch model in that range, which would be certainly very nice. Of course, the Surface has been a larger, higher-priced device, the Surface RT and the Surface Pro. The rumors are that this would be a 7-inch device, lower cost. Not a lot of details beyond that, though. I'm guessing ARM-powered, Dana. What do you think? Do you think that this would be a Pro or an RT, or do you think they'd offer both again?
I feel like everybody has learned their lesson about Windows RT except for perhaps Microsoft itself. I don't know if they're willing to come out and admit that RT was a mistake or a stopgap. I think the rest of us, I don't want to tell you what to think or what you're thinking, but I think it would be a mistake
What are you thinking?
if they went
Let
with
us
RT.
know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Why not just go with Intel Atom since the battery life is almost as good and the performance is actually a cut above RT?
It's also, I wonder if this is that, there was that rumor going around, there was like an Xbox Surface, that Microsoft would make some sort of a handheld gaming thing tied into their Surface world, and maybe
Yeah.
this is some sort of thing to do with that. I'm clearly totally just speculating.
It could be.
But I'm still of the belief that is completely bananas and they wouldn't do that. But then I think Windows RT is bananas, like you were saying, and they've totally
Here's the thing,
wanted
though,
that.
is-
So
The big drawback to RT is that there are no legacy x86 apps. But would you want to use any of those on a 7-inch screen? A lot of the story for the Surface tablets has revolved around productivity. But how productive do you expect to be on a 7-inch tablet? When we think of
Yeah.
7-inch tablets, we think of the Nexus 7, we think of various Kindle Fire tablets, or at least the original one. It's all about consumption, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to consume on a Surface tablet that's that size, you can. I guess you just better expect that the app selection is going to be better than it was at launch.
Yeah, and that's why I think it should be ARM-powered. You'll get a thinner device, you'll get better battery life, and you'll get all the apps that you need to do that sort of thing. I don't think there are that many people who are going to be, taking to a meeting, then coming back and plunking it in a little docking station with a keyboard and mouse and the 7-inch display. Certainly you could power an external display off of that, I'm sure, if you wanted to. But it would also need to be very thick because the Pro was a thicker device and the battery life was much lower.
The Pro was Core i5, which is a whole other chipset.
So we could be stepping down to an Atom. Maybe they could come up with some fancy fanless tech. I don't know. That seems a bit optimistic.
It feels like they've had a huge problem with Surface in general in terms of messaging, in that a lot of people, I think the Surface, or at least Microsoft, has tried to give the impression that it's a computer in tablet form, but then there's the RT version, which is clearly just a tablet, and then a 7-inch thing kind of throws another wrench into this, right?
Well, that's definitely a tablet.
More than meets
right,
the
and
eye.
so that if it's definitely just a tablet, then they haven't really identified the Surface as a tablet yet, right? It's a PC to many people who bought that. I don't think the Surface RT has done anywhere near as well as the Pro. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but I think that's to be the case. And I don't know. It doesn't seem to make any. It doesn't seem like there's a clear vision for what they want to do with Surface, and this seems just like another thing that they're trying.
The potential marketing is confusing. Also, having met with Microsoft a bunch of times, and I know how long they were working on the original 2 Surface tablets and how much thought went into it, just because I forget the exact number, but there were at least 100 custom parts, if not more. So would that mean that they would have had to be working on the 7-inch tablet actually for quite a while, alongside
the Surface was in
10-inch
development
one?
for what, 2 or 3 years, I think it was. So it was
Right.
a long time. So if indeed the 7-inch is happening, it's been in development for a long time.
And so does that mean they were working on 2 different products with 2 different sets of custom parts this whole time?
Yeah.
That would be bananas to me.
I got you to say
I
bananas.
was going to say, who are you, Ben Gilbert?
I want to be.
It's the only time anybody's ever said that.
Who doesn't? Charlie Niekirk in chat's asking if this could be Snapdragon 800. That'd be interesting. I kind of doubt it, though. That'd be pretty awesome. There'd be plenty of firepower, that's for sure. And certainly plenty of graphics power as well, as we saw at their CES demos. That might be a bit optimistic, though. But it depends on the timing. Snapdragon 800, we should start to see devices not too far off. We sort of almost saw one at MWC, sort of, kind of, maybe.
Nobody knows.
So there should be more coming soon-ish. It's possible. I don't know that I'd hold my breath on that one, though.
I think this is a smarter play for them, though. I mean, it depends on the pricing, of course. But Google had great success with the Nexus 7 because of the price, the form factor. I think it's not intimidating to people to pick up. It's a much more approachable product, and I think that's how you'll get penetration for Windows and for the Surface line, I think.
Especially on the consumer side of things, which is where they seem to be pushing a little bit more. I mean, the professional side of things is a bit of a question mark, too. But certainly with a 7-inch device, you're aiming consumer level.
Yeah.
Gadget Hero has an interesting conspiracy theory here in chat. Imagine an AMD-powered 7-inch Surface/Xbox tablet that can easily run Xbox games, because the rumor is, of course, that the next Xbox will be AMD-powered. Ben?
Man, I don't want to play that. That sounds that sounds like a really neat concept in a marketing boardroom that doesn't work at all, right? Like, Xbox games don't transfer to...
You're not a fan of games being ported from one platform to another?
I've written, there's an editorial, if you want to go Google it, about how much I dislike virtual buttons being used in
What if it's like the
games
Razer
that were
Edge?
not meant for that, right? What
What if it's like that giant...
Well, the Razer Edge has a game controller
Right, that's
built
what I'm saying,
around
but
it,
what if it has some sort of actual
that would
physical
be
button?
that would be different. Tactile buttons really
Yeah.
change everything about it. The number one problem is input, right? If you're using a tablet and it has touch controls, and games that aren't built for touch controls, it's shourehorning a game onto something that it's not meant for, and it's never going to work really well.
What if that is the next Xbox?
That is
Ooh.
incredibly unlikely. Let's just put that out there. If that is the next Xbox, then Microsoft is shooting itself in the face in the Xbox division.
And many of its fans as well.
Yes,
That
and
seems
many
to be
of
the
its fans as
rumor, though,
well.
going around. Well, at least the sentiment, if you sort of if you're following the next Xbox and sort of fan expectations and whatnot, a lot of people are sort of very negative about this.
They're very
Especially, like,
negative because
always on
Microsoft
and-
hasn't said anything. So this is the issue at the moment, is that Sony has gotten out ahead of Microsoft and has said lots that really appeals to people who play video games, and Microsoft has said nothing. And in the months since the PlayStation 4 was announced in the end of February, Sony has come out swinging, right? Like, they've gone out of their way to produce a message that is very compelling to people who play video games, and Microsoft has said, well, we're not commenting on rumors and speculation yet, which is valid, but dumb right now because they're getting walked all over.
Yeah, and it's crazy how quickly the market has really turned against them, because there was a lot of hate for the PS3. People
Yes.
thought Sony was absolutely insane, that they had this new processor architecture that nobody knew how to work with and developers didn't want to learn. The cost was astronomical, of course. There was very limited supply initially, and the release was a bit of a debacle too.
Yeah.
And everybody, was loving on. And ultimately, the Xbox 360 had no shortage of problems with the red ring and all that good stuff. But still, Microsoft had this, great influx of love among gamers at that point, and now it feels like a lot of that is shifting away, especially most recently with this kind of always-on Twitter debacle, which is kind of...
That guy apparently got fired.
He did.
Well, he resigned.
Resigned, I'm sorry.
Well, we all know what that's
Resigned.
code
That's
for.
yeah. He had a very strict meeting where he decided to resign afterwards. Is what happened?
Yeah.
Which makes me hate the internet. I'm sorry. That
It shouldn't.
irritated
It's
me
not the
last
internet's
night.
fault. It's his fault for saying something in public.
His name, I can't remember his name. He was a creative director at Microsoft.
Or something.
He's a creative director for 343 Studios, which
Right,
is the
Halo.
part of Microsoft that makes Halo now.
And supposedly got into kind of a joking, kind of funny, snarky fight with a friend who's a developer at
BioWare, yeah.
BioWare.
Manveer Air is the name of the guy at BioWare. He's a relatively prominent developer. He worked on Mass Effect 3, and he was having a somewhat sarcastic conversation, apparently. Apparently, I'm not clear on actually how sarcastic this was or if they were really arguing. But reportedly, they were having a sarcastic conversation, and then the gentleman from Microsoft said some things with regards to why would I want to live there where there is poor internet connections, or maybe people should deal with it, or all these other kind of nasty negative things that could be
He was
really
not very
poorly
understanding,
interpreted.
I think it's safe to say.
He said,
Yeah.
"Oh, the electricity went out. I won't buy a vacuum or something."
Right, that was his argument, basically, that like people deal with the concept of having to require electricity to use electronics, so why would you be upset about the internet to play games, which seems like doesn't make any
And
sense
ultimately,
at all. But
who knows what he was saying, because maybe he literally meant that with the powers out, you can't use your next-gen Xbox.
Right.
Or maybe it just means that you can't play online, or maybe it means that all these media services that have been rumored that we'll talk about here shortly won't work if you're not online, which makes perfect
Right.
sense.
Right.
Who knows what he was talking about, but ultimately his tone was not exactly very friendly, and he wasn't exactly putting a good message forward in the lack of any other message. So, Microsoft has created this vacuum of news, and you put this tiny little nugget in there, and boom, it blows up to be something big, and dude loses his job. So that's a bit unfortunate.
it is. And Halo 4 was super good, so it's unfortunate that he's losing his job over saying something stupid on the internet, although he's produced a pretty freaking good product. So
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
well.
a very good product. I enjoyed Halo 4.
I'm still enjoying it.
So probably not the next Xbox and a tablet, but we did get some more tiny little tidbits of information that may or may not actually be about the next Xbox. Of course, we're kind of digging for news at this point. We heard again, I think with Bloomberg, more reports that it'll be an AMD-powered device, which ties in nicely to some of the things we've heard in the past. Before, also had some rumors that this will actually serve as a kind of like a successor to your cable box, much in the way that Google TV works, and that you can have a HDMI input, and the Xbox will be able to do video overlays to kind of control your content. We've seen things like that with the current Xbox. You can play ESPN on there and do things like that, but ultimately it's very limited, the kind of functionality. This would open the door to a lot more content, but it also means that it suddenly becomes curiously dependent on your cable box, which sounds like an odd thing for Microsoft to really get into at this point.
Well, it's optional too, right? Like you could never hook up your Xbox up to the cable box, and that would be okay. But it's it seems very likely because that HDMI in port was on the leaked diagram of the internals of the Xbox many months ago, so it seems like almost assured that this is happening. But it's very interesting because Microsoft has been positioning the Xbox brand as a entertainment hub forever, and this is just one more step in that direction. And like you were saying with the Xbox 360, there's you can plug in your Xfinity details or whatever and use your cable box through the Xbox. So it's already sort of something that they've been trying to do. This just kind of extends it more and seems like a perfectly logical extension.
And interestingly, Microsoft just sold their Media Room functionality to Ericsson. This is the video on demand service. They actually power Uverse and some other cable boxes. So, another good sign that Microsoft is putting all their money in the Xbox at this point, or all that functionality anyway.
It's certainly something. I mean, we've been seeing a lot of rumors at this point, and it's starting to seem like it's hard to ignore a lot of them, right?
Yes.
Like it's becoming a situation where when so many people are saying the same thing and everybody is talking to their big air quotes independent sources or anonymous sources or whatever, it seems like it's
Multiple
getting more and more
anonymous
likely that these things are probably the case.
There are certainly things happening. I think we can safely say
I
that.
think that's safe to say. And we'll probably hear something soon. I would say that's also safe to say.
Do you think they'll
Yeah.
hold off until E3, or they're going to have
I don't think there's a
separate
snowball's
event?
chance in hell they will hold off until E3.
No?
No. I mean, it's the same thing as like, would you announce your major product at CES? Probably not. It's probably not the best idea unless you're
Companies used
somebody
to.
big enough to do that.
Yeah.
And there isn't. I don't think anybody has, especially in the year that PlayStation 4 is also launching. I don't think they have the ability to do something like that.
It's kind of a shame because it kind of takes some of the wind out of E3, which is my favorite show of the year. But ultimately, it's It's just the trend right now.
Are you going to the same show I am?
You don't like E3?
I do. I like video games, so E3 makes it hard to like video games.
True.
That's the problem. It's such a. I mean, it's marketing, right? It's like it's meant to be. It's not. That's fine that it is that, but that is the least exciting part of video games.
This was my first trade show back in '97.
That's fair.
So,
That's fair.
you know,
There's
I
some
have-
sentimentality attached.
Yeah. So it's.
Was that in Atlanta?
Atlanta.
Oh, man.
I drove to Atlanta because I was an unpaid writer at that point. Drove to Atlanta in my Toyota, like overnight, and sweated like heck.
It wasn't a Toyota Supra, was it?
It was an MR2.
Oh,
actually,
all right.
So not far off.
I imagine you had a sports car, yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So I had. I have a special place in my heart for E3, even during the awful Santa Monica years and all that terrible thing.
That was my first year. Was the year after Santa Monica, where it was like 2,000 people in the convention center, and so it's like football stadium of space and a dot of people. It was pretty interesting to see that. But yeah, I think it's very unlikely we'll see it at E3, and it's very likely they'll do their own event or whatever, just like Sony did, right? And then they'll go further into detail at E3. And
presumably the first playable games maybe will be at E3, something like that, or maybe they'll do something. I hope they don't do what Sony did, which is talk about the device, don't actually show the device.
I think we'll see it.
I think we will too. Yeah.
I think E3 is going to be the place where we see both the PS4 and whatever the next Xbox is called. I don't know that they'll show it at their event. Maybe they will, but I think it's more likely that they'll save stuff like that for E3.
They've also talked about, or I've heard talk lately about there being multiple Xboxes. So one being a very media-focused device. Maybe they can play only online games or Xbox Live arcade games, and then a separate, full-featured Xbox.
Yeah, this has kind of
720
been
Durango, whatever.
I think this is contributing to some of the misinformation that we've seen actually about the next Xbox. That there is. This also seems very likely that there will be a less expensive Xbox Mini, so to speak, of basically a diskless version of the Xbox 360 that will be able to play all this stuff. There's even rumors that it'll be able to piggyback onto the Durango, that you can connect them somehow, and that you won't lose
Like
the
a
backwards
Sega
compatibility.
CD kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah. Bizarrely,
32X.
which is super weird. But the idea being there that you're going to probably lose backwards compatibility with Xbox 360 in the next Xbox because they're going with the same x86 architecture that PlayStation 4 is. Rumors, that's the rumor.
Finger quotes, people.
Yeah, finger quotes, though, come on. But as a result, they're going to try selling this new SKU so that you can kind of have that compatibility there with something new that they can sell. Also, they can sell a less expensive version of their Xbox to people who may not have bought it, or for developing markets, or for whatever else.
So is the Xbox Mini going to be a much sleeker Ouya?
That would
That
be very
connects
easy
to your
to
cable
do that.
and-
So I spent a lot of time today with the Ouya.
Yes, you did.
How
You'll
was
find
that,
out
Ben?
more about that. Man, I want to
Ben's
be more
not happy
positive on
about the
that.
Ouya.
It's been a trying situation. The controller is just a mess, and it's frustrating. But anyway, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to get off into wild tangents here.
Yeah, we talked enough about that.
We've talked quite a bit about it.
So it definitely seems like an event before E3's a lock. We'll probably see the device itself. It'd be fascinating if they went back to the modular console days. 32X and the Sega CD and the Neo Geo CD
Oh
and
my goodness.
the 64DD. And there are all these great little things that you could sit on top of your console. Or sit
That
on the
used
side
for
of
like
the
2
console.
games ever,
Right.
and then never again.
Right. It'd be amazing
Yeah.
if somebody did that again. Just
I really
because-
liked Star Wars 32X. That was a really good game. That's the one I can name on 32X. That's really good.
I was really upset we never got the 64DD.
Yeah, I know.
It's Japan
It's
only,
stillborn,
right, I think?
yeah.
Yeah, but you can get the is it Ocarina of Time expansion that was on there.
Yes.
can.
You
Yeah.
can
Yes.
get that now, which
It's
is
in the
something.
Master
at
Quest,
least.
I think.
Yep.
It
the
is.
GameCube thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I had that.
Charlie
This is
in
really nerdy.
chat's
Sorry,
asking,
Dan.
could they introduce a game streaming service? I know OnLive almost died, but they could try that. I mean, that's what we're hearing is that's how Sony's going to get around backwards compatibility by streaming games. Maybe Microsoft could take the same route.
I really doubt it, honestly. Microsoft doesn't own a streaming company, right? Like Sony's taking that route mostly because they spent $400 million on Gaikai, and not because of any other reasons. I mean, it's a smart move. It's not to say that, but that was definitely like a long-term plan, right? That was something that they bought for that reason with that.
Now they're
idea
going to
in
make it
mind.
work come hell or high water.
I think it was like that was the concept right from the jump that they were going to use that for that. I mean, the PlayStation 4 has been in development for 6 years or something. They said it's like a very long time coming.
Isn't it more likely that they want to use it so that when you're perusing the PlayStation Store, you can go ahead and actually demo a game instantly?
That too.
And
That's
then
another
sort of
part
jump
of it.
back out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
It's that. It's for backwards compatibility. It's for. It's going to assist in the. I believe it's
The
going to
download
assist in the when
process,
you're
right?
downloading
Yeah,
something and
so
you
you
want
can
to play it
instant-
immediately,
yeah.
so you can instantly start. They haven't super detailed a lot of that stuff, actually. The Gaikai stuff was kind of vague at the PS4 event.
And so whatever executive brokered that deal can feel good about himself.
Yeah,
I
also
think that's
that,
probably
yes.
part of it.
But it seems very unlikely that Microsoft will take the same route. They seem to have more of a focus on cloud. They already have cloud storage on the Xbox 360, and I think that we'll see more of that stuff. But streaming doesn't seem like something Microsoft has ever addressed, actually, in terms of gaming, which is maybe strange, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, the jury's still out on streaming. Like, have you used OnLive?
Just for review and sample purposes, never casually for fun.
It's fine. It's not as good as a console, right? Like it works, and it's anytime there is even a remote sense of lag, it's like, oh, I could just play this on a console. Forget it. There's no OnLive exclusives, so there's
That's
not
why
that
you need
to
to
go
move
there
to
for, right?
Austin or Kansas City.
Yeah,
Right.
I guess I need to go somewhere with such incredible.
And that's
Yeah.
where I live, which is one of those places that the gentleman from Microsoft would not want to live.
No.
Last bit of gaming news. GameStick delayed by 2 months. The developer units are shipping on time, but the actual casual gamer units that were supposed to be shipping this month are going to be delayed until June. Do you think this is in any way related to the Ouya feedback?
I don't. Their controller is wholly different, and honestly, after having used the GameStick, it seems pretty different from what Ouya is trying to do. They are both Android-based platforms, and they're both just something you plug into your TV without it being like a big whole console wire situation. But it seems like more that it's meant to be a Trojan horse for their platform, which is PlayJam, than anything else. And that's really like a casual games portal. It's not really meant to be like a let's bring mobile games to the television, which has been Ouya's messaging the whole time. GameStick really seems to be like, let's just produce this vehicle for people to buy our casual games off of our casual portal. So it's probably just that they're not ready, honestly. I don't think of them as a competitor with Ouya, really. It's too weird. GameStick is weird. It's a little stick. Can't really do much with it. It's not really meant for like hacking and stuff. Like Ouya has this whole other message and a whole other, I think, a different angle than we're seeing with GameStick. So probably not. Maybe. Probably not.
Fair enough.
Probably not.
All right, so let's take a couple questions. We've got a question from Ganesh here in chat. If the X Phone is launched at Google I/O, do you think it will replace the Nexus line, or will it be a second tier? The X Phone is kind of a rumored high-end customizable device from Google, supposedly going to be launching at I/O. It's been a rather nebulous concept. I'm not really inclined to believe that this is anything other than just another Nexus device with a fancy code name myself. I don't know, Joseph, if you have any.
No, I agree. I
different
mean,
feelings.
from what I had read about the X Phone, I thought it was supposed to be something coming from Motorola,
Right.
not like a Nexus line device. That this would be sort of how they would marry working with Google as their overlords going forward, but still retaining their separate identity as a manufacturer.
It's so strange that they retain a separate identity. We talk about this all the time.
We do.
It's so
Yeah.
strange.
Well,
I'm
'cause
sorry.
I mean, it's just it was a patent play, right?
I
they
know,
had a-
but
they had
why
a-
not just have them be your phone manufacturer?
Because Google's not interested in that. I mean, they're not. Look at the shortages for the Nexus 4, right? They're selling it, I'm assuming, at a loss, right? Or if they're
Or
making,
very close to cost.
or very
yeah.
very close to the margin. So they have no interest in being a manufacturer. It's just not part of their services. They're cloud-based services. Everything has to be based upon search, right? What can they serve ads on? How can they have more
But
information? for you?
Motorola is
So-
a hardware company,
right?
and they bought them.
right.
So that's why in my brain I think like, oh, Google bought a hardware company that makes phones. They own Android. Maybe they're gonna maybe that's gonna be a thing that they put together.
I
Like
mean,
it
they-
seems
they
like a
could-
1+1 situation.
They could easily
you know?
go
like,
forward and vertically integrate if they wanted and become like Apple, but
Sure. Anyway, I'm
it
sorry, go
reduces the
ahead. X-Pro.
penetration as far. I mean,
That's not good business. For
No,
them.
exactly.
That's strange to me. Anyway, I'm not a Google executive, so maybe that's a good thing.
Maybe you will be someday, Ben.
Maybe.
Trevor in chat asking, related, any new Nexus details or any new Nokia details? No, we really haven't heard
haven't
much
heard
lately on the
anything.
Nokia front
No.
or on the
There's
Nexus
time
front.
before I/O, so the leaks might.
Plenty of time before I/O, yeah. I mean, certainly we're expecting that, we talked, I think, last week about the rumored Nexus 7 with a higher-res screen and
Right.
smaller bezels, which I think is pretty much a lock at this
Yeah.
point. It was such a successful device. It makes sense they do another one. But beyond that, no, we haven't really heard much about the supposed next Nexus phone. We certainly haven't heard much out of Nokia lately other than the 520, I think, was the last device we got. from them.
520 and the 720.
720, right,
Yeah.
okay. Let's see. We've got, I think, one more question. Machiel on V Machiel on Twitter asking, "Is there a screen size that Samsung won't try?"
I mean, they're just trying kind of everything, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of.
I mean, if you look at if you've ever gone to MWC and you go to their show, their booth, you can see they make everything under the sun. I mean, if they could make a 2-inch screen and, I don't know, make it attractive enough, they would. But we've seen Ace Plus, the Advance. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So, I don't know.
They are not big on the 11-inch Ultrabooks.
11-inch Ultrabooks, okay.
Yeah.
That's one niche perhaps they could move into. They certainly have TVs that, from like 13 inches all the way up to 110 or whatever.
Yeah.
Tablets and phones at every size we've established already, but perhaps not at the 3 to 3.5 inch size. Maybe that's their next move. Maybe they're going to go smaller now.
Yeah.
I want that Zoolander phone. The one he's like, I have the black cough, Dad.
One of my favorite movies.
It's the best.
All right, I think we're going to go ahead and call this podcast to a close. It's been wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. If you haven't joined us live, again, try to tune in next week, 3:30 Eastern on Thursdays. Thanks again to Audible for being our title sponsor this week. Joseph, thank you. J.R. Volpe on Twitter, is that right?
Yes, thank you.
Dana Wollman at Dana Wollman on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Gilbert at Real Ben Gilbert.
Not the faker, not that fake one.
Correct. I'm at Tim_Stevens because I like special characters. Thank you again for joining us. And we'll be back with another Engadget podcast next week.